If you're looking for some straight-up marketing advice that's super chilled and also a bit of a laugh, then grab yourself a drink and get ready for Marketing and Margaritas, a podcast that makes marketing entertaining. Brought to you by Rebel Nation, direct from regional Queensland.
Hello and welcome to Marketing and Margaritas. Today, Jade and I are joined by Jay Shipston from Triple M. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Jade's a little bit nervous having a real, actual audio star in the podcasting
I love
studio.
radio voices, man. I have such a thing about that radio voice because I've got an annoying, high-pitched yet sort of monotonous kind of voice. Radio voices are just so cool.
Do you think I have a radio voice?
Dude, as soon as you talk, it's like your voice floods my ears. Like it's like when the mayor or like Paul O'Connor, there's some people when they talk it floods.
See, Paul
I don't know how to explain that.
Paul O'Connor and the mayor are both radio men, and obviously I know them too because I work in radio. But I was always told back in the day that I never had the voice for radio.
Dude, no,
There's
you
a
do.
surprise. There's a
It's
secret
like,
for you, yeah.
or maybe it's just because it's a familiar voice. I don't know, but
Well, you have been in radio for almost 30 years now.
Long time.
So it's become pretty native to Mackay to hear you on airwaves.
But it's just like a kind of polished, warm, sort of sounding voice. Like it's just not grating or, I don't know, radio voices are different. And it's probably so practiced, you wouldn't even, it's like you turn it on or off. That's probably just how you always are.
I always talk about it. It's funny
Yeah.
because
I
you
was
go
going
to
to ask,
shops.
is this your normal
Yeah,
voice? Or do
it
you have a
is.
radio
It is.
voice?
I mean, like when we record in the show, and probably for example now, I think my subconscious mind is like speak clearly, but you project it a little bit, but this is exactly how I talk. And then people go, you sound exactly like you do on the radio. I'm like, it's probably a reason for that because that's how I talk.
So this is also exactly how I talk, and that's part of the problem that we have. But, we just keep on trucking anyway.
Yeah, you can't even really do like a makeover on your voice. Well, I suppose people probably can.
Would you want to do that?
But like
I
people
wouldn't
do
mind
different
cleaning up the
voices.
language a little bit sometimes. That last
No.
one where we did the big swears and stuff, I felt really bad about
I
that
saw that
afterwards.
episode. I saw an episode with a big swear. You know what they say about people who swear? Highly intelligent.
We'll take it.
It's true. It's true fact. It's a fact. I Google. I spend
hope so.
I spend far too much time on Google.
You're in radio. That's
Exactly
like
right.
part of the job, right? It's
Yeah.
research.
I love it.
Okay,
So let's dive into that. When you started out in radio, like we said, it was nearly 30 years ago. Why did you get into the industry? What drew you to radio?
I was a 5-year-old kid, and my mum bought me. And forever and a day, I always said, like, how does that guy get on the radio? Like, he's coming from a speaker. How do I do this? And I remember vividly when my mum gave me my first radio at the age of 5 for Christmas. And I was like, this is what I want to do.
Oh, dude, that's so
So the radio my mum got me, I still have to this day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. So I collect them, but it's just been a passion for me, so it's not necessarily a job.
And is it something where, like, you directly went into it, or did you tool around with a few other things first, or was it, like, radio from start to finish?
Well, through high school, we had the school counsellors and parents and some family
And I
members.
bet they went, yes, become a radio announcer, Jay.
Oh.
What a fantastic career.
If only they did say
Set
that.
for life.
If only they did say that. But it was more, you got
Get
to
a
find
sensible
something more safe, more, approachable. And I thought, okay, well, I'll do that. I did retail on the side, but I still dabbled in radio on the side. So I was doing two just to see if I liked what I wanted to do. And it just, the cards fell in my favour. And I got into community radio at 16, which is voluntary. So I was going there late nights and doing the weekend
There's
shifts.
nothing wrong. That shows you that you actually really love what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like when you're volunteering to do it.
Passion.
You just, because you want to. I was the same thing when I first started out. I was doing my degree and I was like a receptionist at some place, but I would do marketing for like Mars, like local charity, because I just wanted to do marketing and loved animals. So like, what
But
more
then
could you
it
want
gives
in
you
life?
more skills, right, to go into when you get to where you want to get to do.
Especially in creative industries,
Yeah.
it's so hard for
Yep.
people to get a toehold in them. And I always say when I interview people, like, I'm looking for someone who's got a little bit of skill set already, and they're like, well, how do I get that if I'm not employed? It's like, volunteer.
Yeah.
And one thing that I was told as well, people are always trying to get to the top faster, but I actually found the journey a whole lot easier, like going into community radio and then learning the first promotions gig and being a shit kicker and all that sort of stuff in big radio stations. And I said yes to everything just to get to where I got to today.
And I think that's more important. You appreciate like how things operate, where
Oh, you know
everyone
so
is
much more.
placed, and their value of their roles all the way through. Because it's not just you and Dave on the radio in the morning by yourselves sitting in a room.
It's a whole team that makes that happen.
Whole team. And like even we've got a young girl who just started with us recently, Shakira, who drives our Triple M vehicle. Never done radio before, great personality. Sometimes she's like, oh, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? I've been in that position. So I say to her daily, how's it all going? Are you okay? Do you need help with this? Because sometimes it can be daunting in any industry going into a job going, shit, how am I going to handle this? So if you've got somebody who's been there before, it's a really good helping.
And as a boss too, it just means you can relate better to that person too. Like, so, with my marketing assistant, when she's starting out and she's doing things, I'm like, I used to do exactly the same thing. You didn't fuck up. You're just learning.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can actually relate to them better because you've been in that position. You know what it's like.
Because you're scared. You're scared that you're going to disappoint people. Disappointment is the biggest thing for me. And I hate disappointing people. Disappointment, you don't want to, fuck it up like you say. It's just, it's taking one step at a time.
And I think it makes you a better teacher. Like Jade was saying, being a better boss. Like, you know those hurdles that need to be overcome and how it can go wrong because you've been there.
But you also value what people do too, because it's like, with admin sort of thing, when you like do admin-y stuff or whatever, and people are like, well, what exactly does Lani do for you? And I'm like, everything. Lani is my life, and like she just makes sure my life runs well. Like, because
I like what Jade called me off at air before.
What was that?
He called me your anchor.
Oh. As in you're weighing me down? Oh, Lani, don't see yourself like that.
Someone has to keep you here.
You guys can talk about that as much as you want.
Jade's like, I am not
going to that argument. Not going to that argument.
Really? You're weighing on that? Oh, interesting. What a funny. Okay, well, each to their own.
I'm a bit of a shit stirrer.
Okay, cool. So what we actually wanted to get you in here today was to talk about personal branding. So we did an episode recently on personal branding, and like I just get asked questions about personal branding a lot. It's becoming more and more of a hot topic. And I think that, obviously doing this for as long as you don't have a business. I mean, like, I know you've had something, but you know what I mean? Like, you are the brand.
Yeah.
And so it's like, when we build our brand for Rebel, or when we build brands for clients and stuff, we look at what the brand values are and who their customer is and all that sort of thing.
Create that identity for them.
There's a lot of strategy and shit around that. But when you are the brand, and I've done personal branding, I'm actually going through this exercise with one of my really close friends at the moment, and she's super meek and super humble and amazing, but like, modest as fuck.
Yeah.
Trying to get her to understand that her personal brand doesn't mean I'm going to make her go out and get her hair professionally done, and she doesn't have to do a makeup every, it's about her brand and bringing out how awesome she is to other people.
Yeah.
So for you've been doing this for nearly 30 fucking years. What's some things that you've learned along the way of personal branding?
Well,
what's your experience?
My biggest mistake was saying yes to every single thing. Don't ever do all. I mean,
oh God, that's just good advice for business, life, everything. Don't fucking say yes to everything.
No, you can't, because what happens is people expect you to say yes every time in the future, and it's not you don't want to say no just to piss people off, but it's things that. And when you talk about businesses, I actually am my own business, because every day I'm on the air, people are like, I know that guy because he talks about mental health issues. He's got a care for animals. He's a gay man. He came out on the breakfast show. So all of these things like sort of formed my business, who I am. So then when I was younger, saying yes to everything. Number one, burnt myself out. Number two, it muddied the water for people. What did you stand for, Jay? I couldn't even tell you what I stood for. I couldn't even tell you. So I took a step back and said, okay, I'm going to say yes to the things I align with. It's like Rebel. You guys wouldn't go out and do every single thing out there if you didn't align with it. It's like any business. You've got to really look at your strategy, like you say, and go, is this going to align with me? Where is this going to take me for my next step? Is this going to bring me some skills?
And it's setting boundaries as well. I think, like, if you don't set boundaries for how other people treat you, then they might not even do it consciously, but you can get mistreated as a person or as a business because people will just use you if you don't set. And that's, in a way, like, you're the one who has to set the boundaries. You know what I mean? They're not going to be the person that does that. So you putting thought and effort into what you are going to say yes to, what you're going to say no to. And I guess for you then, how did you come about to that? Like, what kind of criteria do you run through on what I say yes to, what I say no to? Like, do you actually have like a personal brand statement, or do you know what your brand values are? Like, what is that when it is you as the brand?
Aligning. That's my biggest thing. So when I get asked to host things or be guest speakers at something, is this something I know a lot about? Is it something that I am passionate about talking about or being involved in? Because otherwise it's just, we're getting Jay from the radio to step in, and that's cheapening their message.
Yeah. Because you're not going to do it as much justice as someone else who's like super keen about it is going to do.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into a birthing centre and talk about childbirth. Like that just doesn't align with me, right?
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing it.
I could probably do it, but it brings them nothing, and I have...
It's a different perspective.
Exactly right. I don't know much about the female anatomy, so it's got nothing to do with me. So I just align myself with things that I do know about. I'm not going to sound like a dickhead talking about. I would be proud to walk away and say, I did a really good job.
Yeah.
And that person was happy to align with me, and I was happy to align with them. It's great. It's about forming relationships.
And so do you sort of do it then as like a gut instinct sort of thing? Like, okay, here's an offer.
Yeah.
Is this something that I really feel strongly about?
Yes.
No, I'm going to pass on it so that somebody who does feel strongly about can take up on it.
And I suggest to people, hey, I don't think I'm right for this job, but I think this person would be better.
We do the same thing. I don't like sending people away with just a no.
I feel like it softens the blow.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does.
Like,
And when you're a people pleaser, it's also just like a way of kind of mitigating your anxiety over saying no as well.
But for some people, it's hard to ask people that they respect or that they're really eager to have.
Yeah.
And, they might just be asking you because they're like, wow, it's Jay.
Yeah.
How good would
And
it
that's
be?
it. You don't want them to feel bad about
And
asking
it's like
because good on them.
It is, and that's the thing, but I don't want, like, they would pay me handsomely to do these things, but then if I walk away and they're not getting what they expected out of it, and I'm walking away with a fistful of cash going, yes, they're going to go, that didn't work, why did we do that?
And it's just yucky.
It's terrible.
And it
I've been in
dilutes
that
your brain in a
position
different
before,
way.
And it's terrible, it's bad. So.
Okay, so that's just a gut instinct. And I think most of us notice that. Even if we get a client at work, you kind of like, oh, I don't really love doing this.
Yes, yeah.
It just doesn't fit.
And you've got to, like you say, you know what the outcome's going to go because of the gut instinct. You know what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
And it's not a no, it's a, we're not right for this. Maybe try this person instead.
Yeah.
And ours is too, like, because sometimes we'll get people who are just starting out or whatever and they've heard our name or they've seen our work and they're like, oh, we want to work with you. And we're like, great, we're a premium marketing agency with like every service sort of thing. So you probably, if you're just starting out, you might need to be bootstrapping a little bit at the start.
Yeah.
Here's some tips on how you can do that, or here's where to start so that you can. So that way, like you said, they're still kind of coming away with something. Like, same thing as doing a recommendation or whatever. Like, you still want to help people, but that doesn't mean you can give everything to people all the time, because that doesn't actually work out for anybody.
And it's better for that person that you said no to and push them away into somebody else's direction by saying, God, that guy was really lovely. He didn't take the job, but he referred me to somebody else who could do it properly.
It's still a good start for that relationship because hopefully they do well, and then as they're coming up, you come across each other again and stuff. Okay, so taking back then to that strategy piece behind personal branding, then, like you said, you're known as a big animal lover. You came out as gay on the fucking radio, man. Like, and mental health issues, you're all over that shit. You're like, let's be loud and proud no matter what's going on. You're known for some very, well, shouldn't be controversial anymore, but in some ways still kind of divisive sort of things. Again, is that, I'm assuming I know the answer to this, but I just want to ask anyway, is that like a conscious thing for you going, I'm going to do this so that I can champion this? Or is this you just going, I need to be honest with my audience. I need to put this out there about who I am.
It's both. Like, when it comes to mental health, I think the more we talk about it just collectively, the more lives we can potentially save. And I think it's something that should have been spoken about a long time ago before we really took a stance on it on the breakfast show. But coming out as gay was a bit of both of those things. I had to do it for myself and I had to do it for my audience. Imagine a 14 or 15-year-old young girl, young boy, listening at home, thinking they were completely different.
Yeah.
They can't see a light at the end of the tunnel. We're in a regional city.
I think it's even more important in regional areas for people who do feel secure in who they are to stand up and do that for people who don't, because there's less of those kind of role models. And you say about mental health, about saving lives. It's not just about it's quality of life too, man.
Absolutely.
The amount of people who go through anxiety or depression or whatever and think that that's just their fucking lot in life to have to deal with that. And it's like, actually, no, dude, you can go and get help. And there's all these different things that you can do. And maybe you don't have to feel like shit about things. And maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you're actually fucking awesome and you just don't realize it yet.
And I found myself in this position of being in Mackay. I love Mackay. I've got roots here big time. My mum was a Mackay girl and still is a Mackay girl. And like, I've grown up here ever since I was a kid, coming up in the holidays, and now permanently been here for 20 years. But it's very male dominated. It's very, some people say rednecked. I don't agree with that, but I can see why they would say that. It's very, you're dominant. But coming out as a gay man on a male-dominated radio station, I thought, shit, this is going to go down like a lead balloon. And it didn't. It actually flew. That lead balloon flew a little bit. And it's changed people's minds, perceptions, and, you know, I got a lot of thanks out of that. But I didn't do it for ratings. I didn't do it for, what do they call it these days? Clout or whatever the word is these days. But I did it because it was being true to myself. I didn't have to lie on the air anymore because people would be like, when are we going to meet your girlfriend? But that
as I say, they might not think but there's all those, it's not like a full-on outright lie. No. It's all those little kind of questions and stuff where you just sort of deflect things or whatever.
Yeah, exactly right. And that came around, and talking about personal brand, since then, I've had, I've been speaking in schools, so it's taken me away from radio, being the Jay from the radio. It's just being to the guy on the radio who happens to be like everybody else, just a little bit different. And you, child, can grow up to be a little bit different, whether you're gay, whether, whatever it is you are that you identify as not being normal. That's helped my personal brand a bit. I don't want to be the poster boy for gay and lesbian children or adults, but I've been slapped with it and I'm happy to run with it,
I think it helps people. Yeah, 100%, man. So I recently came out in a way myself. So we have our newsletter that comes out every Friday called Wild Oats. And so I put into this one about how I had started therapy, which was my first appointment was the day before. And for me, it's kind of like nothing's actually happened. So it's not like, I just had something crash down yesterday. I'm not depressed. I'm still functioning and running a business and, trying to set up a fucking house and all the rest of it.
You're not making it easy for you.
But, I've got this there's these bits of shit sort of hanging around that I'm just like, I just want some help clearing this stuff. Don't think I'm actually capable of figuring all of these bits and pieces out. I want someone else to help me with this. Yeah. And it's like from the very first session that I had, he taught me a few things about neuroscience and stuff. Whenever people teach me things, I automatically always like them. So that was a really good start. And, a couple of insights and stuff about myself. And just from that first, like I said, I was not at the brink of suicide. I wasn't depressed. I wasn't struggling to get out of bed. I had nothing like that. But just that first session and, him kind of seeing things from an objective perspective and sharing that with me was like, that's cool. I feel so much better already about this particular thing. Yeah. So it's that quality of life. But then sharing it in Wild Oats, I was like, so one of my things of my homework was to normalize being in therapy because I see it as a massive weakness. It's admitting failure, etc. That's my connotation with it. Yeah. So to try and get past that is to put it out there. And so I was like, I'll put in Wild Oats. And at the time, I'm like, I don't know if this is a good idea or not. And then I was like, as I normally do with stuff, I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. Yeah. Sent it off. Yeah. And then immediately, the Facebook messages, text messages, reply emails, on the day, over the weekend, what I've gotten back from people, even a friend of mine has asked for the contact details for the person that I'm seeing because she's going through something difficult. And she's more stubborn than I am, so for her to ask that was so huge. You know what I mean?
It's the ripple effect, though. You know, you don't know.
From one little email, from one fucking appointment, just admitting I'm seeing a psych, and or whatever you call it, and it's just the effect that's come back, and it, like you said, those thank yous and messages from people. It's just it's not that you do it so that people say that to you, but it's so fucking nice, man.
It makes you feel like you're making a difference, It really does.
And it makes you too, it's sort of people saying, oh, I actually went to therapy, or I've been in therapy for the last 8 years, or I did this. And it's just it is so much more normal than we realise. Health is just health, whether
but to
it's
everybody
mental or
else,
physical.
Looking at you going, oh, shit, Jade's got it all together. She's got this business, she's renovating, you know what I mean? But in your head, you're
ignoramuses, I swear to God, I don't know how that comes across.
Yeah, exactly right. And, I think that's a strong trait for business owners. I think it's a strong trait for people in general, especially leaders in our region as well.
I think you get to a point in life where you're like, I'm supposed to have shit together by now.
Yeah.
And if I don't and people see that, then...
When is that point that it kicks in?
And you feel
then I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah, exactly right.
So, cover that up, don't hide that, don't tell anyone.
Yeah. No, it's great. Good on you.
Hey, this is all about me. Oh, no, that's about you.
It's a perfect segue just to talk about yourself and brand planning.
Who's good about talking about themselves?
No,
Actually, I'm quite shit at it, but anyway.
You did very well though. I like that.
Well, I just feel really strongly on it too, sort of thing, and it's such a new experience for me, kind of sharing that stuff, because I always think of myself in some ways I'm extremely open and too much like oversharing. In some ways I'm extremely private.
Yeah.
And so that whole personal brand thing, I think plays into that about, I want to be transparent and stuff, but at the same time, you know, I do believe in keeping things to myself, which brings to my next thing as well. So with you, again, you know, I'm going to hop back to this, but it's just such a prominent one. So, you know, coming out as gay on radio, you know, rather than it being like just a story or something original, you know what I mean? Like the way that you did it, everything was such a way of standing up and fucking claiming it.
Yeah.
Where, you know, for certain things, like I know certain things that have happened in your personal life that you don't put out everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, where do you draw that line on what is public and what's private?
I think there comes communication, again, because you don't want to damage your personal brand as well. And not that anything that's happened in my life would damage the personal brand.
Yeah, but some stuff also just needs to be for you and your family and shit, man.
And that's the thing. So when I speak to my husband, Jamie, we talk about things. We've got a line about what can be talked about, what can't be talked about. With Dave, I know lots of Dave's personal life. I know what can be spoken about. I know what can't be spoken about, and vice versa. So that comes to communication.
So just having those conversations sort of thing where it's like, I've opened up to you about this. Don't fucking use it on radio. I will hunt you down and skin your life.
That's exactly right. We have those conversations all the time. But we always do, if we have a conversation via text or in person, we just do NFA, not for air.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so we don't, if it goes to air, like, you know, there's things in his personal life that he has struggled with over the years. He's like, and I'm like, damn it, man, that'd be great content. He's like, do not. So I've tried to convince him.
I love you and everything, but you're just such a good source of content.
Yes, but no, I respect the
That's the
line.
reason I love you.
there's that line there, and I don't often agree with it because we do disagree on everything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Dave and I disagree on everything.
I thought we were talking about you and Jamie.
Oh no, Jamie and I. No, Jamie and I.
The
are
other partner in your life.
Yeah, my actual husband.
Your work husband and your life husband.
I'll say because like your actual husband, you guys seem very on the same page with
We are,
things.
but we also see we are similar, but we're also very different.
Yeah.
Which works.
That's how it works.
Yeah. It works very well for us.
Yes, he's definitely, because obviously Jamie works with us, he's definitely not the more extroverted sense that you are.
And that's what I think, you know, the opposites attract. It really does with us too. So, you know, he brings me down because sometimes I can probably get a bit too much. But I also...
Well, he does that with me.
The anchor. It's the anchor again. That's what it is.
Just dragging you down.
Now that it's being repeated, I'm not sure I love the analogy. I think it needs a little bit of workshopping.
It's because I bastardized it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it does.
You're like my brick.
You guys are like Jay and Dave. You should do the breakfast show on Triple M sometime.
I think there is time slot for that. Something with you.
Late night should be good.
All those buttons and shit though, man, the actual technical aspect of it, I think the talking part alone would be quite actual, like onerous sort of thing, but all the technical, I would never, Lani has to run all the tech, like I can't even do this.
Intricate setup, which just has a small panel board, and even then Jay's like, oh, what are they all doing? I'm like, don't touch anything.
She won't even let me use sound effects on things, it's so mean.
She doesn't wear the headphones, so she can't just press a button.
You sound like the Dave, and you're the Jay. Again, the anchor. That's what it is.
Oh, look, some of us just need to shine that little bit brighter.
Exactly right.
All right, so back to personal brand.
Yes, I know. Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So the next thing I really want to talk to you about was, and I guess this is the first thing that we first started talking about with this podcast, was the fact that, again, it has been nearly 30 years that you've been in radio and you are the brand, you are the business in that way. For 30 years, how do you keep your brand fresh and relevant? You know, because that's like you think about like Coca-Cola and Macca's and those kind of big brands that we know that have been around for ages and ages. We're not still seeing the same stuff from Macca's from 30 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it evolves.
Yeah.
It changes. It keeps it fresh.
But even
you know,
with
like,
business,
are you doing makeup? Sorry.
Yeah, well, even with the business, you'd review marketing strategy. You'd review how you approach your business each year, let alone every couple of years.
Yeah.
So do you do that personally?
I do, but I was
I mean,
thinking...
you're getting a makeover every year.
Oh, no, I wish. Does it look like
fresh
I...
hairstyle, new clothes.
Yeah.
No, but that's the thing is brand is beyond radio. It's emceeing, you know, speaking engagements, even just the photos and all that kind of stuff. Social media puts us in the hands of everybody.
It's actually a huge input to branding from a radio point of view. So we have a brand stylist. So every time we have a photo shoot and stuff, somebody is they sort of direct you to what to wear, and so that's helped me in my personal life going, because I have no dress sense at all. I'm the ungayest gay man.
I was gonna say, I mean, you're gay. Doesn't that automatically mean you're good at fashion? Jeez, Jay, you're smashing stereotypes left, right, and centre.
So that does help me in my personal life. I'll be like, I'll take those ideas and I'll use them in my personal life. But I was thinking about this question though when I knew that I was coming to chat with you guys today, because I thought, how do I rebrand and how do I keep relevant? I was joking with Jamie about keeping fresh and relevant.
We might have heard about that.
Yeah, no, we did tell him. But
That's so cute though.
he and I was talking to him about it, but it's true. I think what it is being true to who you are, also knowing what's happening in your environment. So when I see, like, the radio's changed so much since I first started here in Mackay. Things have changed, the music's changed, the station's changed. We were CFM, we were Triple M. I think it's just always being about floating on top of that ocean. So the ocean always changes, the environment around it changes. You're that cork on top. So if you don't change with it, you're going to sink straight away. Yeah. So you've got to go with the flow. You've got to take what is coming at you, even because in a radio sense, the station changes. So I have to change with the station. So our demographic has changed. Now I have to look at what are females aged 25 to 54 interested in. They've got kids. So I'm now...
So that's a conscious thing. Like, you go out and research what's trends, what's interesting, what's happening, what's TikTok
and I don't
about.
have kids. So it's hard for me knowing what a mum and a dad and... I've got a mortgage, and I've got a husband, but I don't have the children. I've got dogs. So it's
got
always...
a lot.
Yeah, exactly
a lot of pets.
Exactly right. So I've always got to do the home research to go... Where are my audience sitting? Where is my brand sitting? Who am I talking to now? Not just in a radio sense, but when I'm away from Triple M, and I think that's hard for people to detach me away from, because I've been on the radio for such a long time, is I am a person who has my own personal brand on the outside, but even that I have to make sure that I'm talking to the right people. I'm not trying to be a Kim Kardashian fan and Britney Spears, but that's not who I am. So, it's always about keeping on top of that ocean as the cork.
And so what about from that visual perspective then? Have you ever done, like, so you say when you do the brand sales thing, like the clothes and everything like that, have you ever consciously been like, oh, you know what, I want to freshen up my brand a little bit, I'm going to shave the beard, or I'm going to do this? Like, is there any kind of visual aspect that comes into it, or are you just sort of like, I will just steal tips from the brand stylist once a year?
I take styles tips and I steal them every now and then, but the beard came from the styling of the radio station. Right. So I never used to have a beard. I think when you and I worked together years and years ago, or we did some work together, I had fresh skin. And
you were fresh face.
So then the beard come along, and I thought, well, that's a great brand. So now people know me as Jay with the beard. Yeah. I always wear a hat.
Yeah.
Always wear a hat. And that's become my brand. Yes, I got thin on top at the age of 21, whatever it is, but I was wearing hats ever since I was 13.
Well, and that's what I mean. It's like those visual components too, that part of what makes up your brand as well. It's like, okay, this is what you stand for, but it's also this is how you're... Because it's like logos and stuff. It's like how you're recognised visually.
What are you famous for, is what they say. I remember when Dave and I were on CFM at the day, and we had a billboard that was put up in Serena. And they made
Not awkward at all being on a billboard?
No. But they made me take my hat off for that photo shoot.
No. I vaguely remember that.
They put the photo on the billboard, and we had not complaints, people running the radio station, who's that guy with Dave? So they actually had to pull the billboard down, we put a new one up with the hat on. So
because it's part of your brand. That's what makes you recognisable.
Yeah. So when I buy a hat now, I actually buy 3 of the same kind of hat, which lasts me, quite 6 months. So it's always the same hat.
Yeah.
Okay, so you do put kind of thought and effort into that. And
I know it doesn't look like it sometimes. I'm wearing pineapple shoes for crying out loud.
I did notice that. They're very cute. Especially because it's all dark and then there's like these flary shoes.
A pop of colour.
Pop of colour. No, you could be a designer.
I know, right? Only with the help of my stylist at work.
Okay, and so then on that same token, so like I said, nearly 30 years, your brand has changed, and it is something that you do put thought and effort into maintaining because it is part of your livelihood in a way. Yeah. People recognizing you and knowing you for certain things or whatever. Like I think I said this to you in the thing as well. It's like, 25-year-old Jay will be a lot different to 35-year-old Jay as compared to 40-something Jay. your brand also growing up with you as well. Is that something that you've been conscious of too? Like, do you look back at things from 20, 30 years ago and be like, what the fuck, why did someone let me do that?
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Like, is that a thing?
Yeah. So Facebook memories is great for this sort of stuff.
God, yes.
Facebook memories, just go through your own memories and you can see how much you've evolved and changed. But
And how much of a twat you used to be as well.
And the stuff that you used to post.
Yeah.
What was I doing? But like, the fashion sense, the things that I stood for, the things I would post about. Honestly, you go back and look at your Facebook pages from 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, and look at the stuff that you post then compared to what you're posting now. You can see where you've changed. You can see how you've evolved. I'm not wearing the same clothes I used to wear. I'm not using the same language. I'm more positive now. Back then I was negative as hell.
Right.
So that's actually a good report card. If you go, oh, fuck, I have changed. I used to love Transformers. I used to post Transformers. I used to wear Transformers hats and shirts and everything.
Oh my God, you posted that Transformers!
Like 15, 16 years ago.
Next time that comes up, you need to share that with me.
It was so embarrassing. But but I would never delete that.
No.
It makes me go, right, you've come a long way. Now that you love whatever it is you love now. But that's a good indication that I have changed. I've moved with the times a little bit. But really, it's the more personal stuff, not the physical stuff like the clothes and stuff, but the things that I'm aligning with, because I do post a lot. But we're talking about sharing a lot. I share a lot on social media, not for any more clouds or anything like that, just because I like to share with my family, my friends, and people who are actually interested in my life. So I share that, but it's
Be a
good
radio personality, man.
Yeah.
Like putting yourself out there is kind of part of who you, like it's part of your personality as well, sort of thing.
Relevant. You want to be relevant to people, and be there for them to reach out to you. So.
Do you use your own social media audience, like of your friends and your family, to kind of gauge what you would share in a more public sense?
I used to.
Yeah.
I used to, but then I think friends and family were onto the whole, are you going to use this on the radio?
Yeah.
So, and it wasn't fair on them because I wasn't saying to them, I'm just going to use this on the show. And they knew that I would, but I just look around me now. So this will be content for tomorrow's breakfast show. Because I'm actually always the interviewer.
Yeah.
Being interviewed is kind of hard for me. So this is the thing, and I put this on the air when I talk about this. It'll be it's hard because people don't like to talk about themselves sometimes. It is struggle. Like I know we jokingly say that we do, but it is hard. Like
I'm not that interesting. Why would I want to talk about it?
But see, I disagree. The things that you in your life, but I think that's where we all come from. To me, I have the most boring life. But everyone's like, oh my God, what?
I can't believe you're doing this and this. You do all kinds of cool shit all the time. I follow you on socials. I've seen this stuff.
Yeah. But to me, because I think we live in that moment, social media has a lot to answer for. Yeah. We show the best part of everything in our lives, but we don't talk about the shitty parts of life. That's why I think...
Which I think is a natural human sort of instinct as well. You're not sort of like, hey, here's all the crappy things about me.
Yeah.
You're kind of like, this was nice, so I wanted to share it.
Yeah.
And I think
it's celebrations. You're creating little celebrations.
Small wins and that kind of thing.
And I think it can have a negative connotation for people because then they're like, well, you're only sharing the good stuff. Yes. And it's like, well, do you want me to share when I stubbed my toe? Like, of course, I'm sharing this thing because we generally like to share positive news.
And that's twofold. You scroll through, and if you're in a negative space, you're like, oh,
you're going to see it in a negative way.
But if you're scrolling through and you're like, everyone is ugly crying, today is a really bad day. Like
it can put a shift on your mood, hey, social media. Yeah.
See, I'm one of those people I go through things and I'm like, oh, that looks really cool. I didn't know they were doing that. Like it's sort of, I don't think I do take other people's wins as my failures. Anyway, I guess it's just one of those things.
To talk to your therapist about?
Nah, fuck me. You know what I'm like too? I will actually probably start a running list on my phone of things I need to talk to my therapist about. Because I can't remember stuff. So
you're paying the person to do it. You may as well get your money's worth, right?
I'm just saying. That's why I said when I sat down with him, I'm like, look, I understand that the sooner I'm open with you, the faster that you'll be able to do whatever you need to do.
You need to talk about.
And he was like, all right. I said, look, I just like to be productive. I'm all about efficiency.
He's making notes like, okay.
She's running this meeting.
It's hard for me to talk about myself, but here is all my wide open wounds from the last 38 years.
Now fix it.
Yeah. And I literally said that. I said, okay, how do we fix this? And he was like, just so we can get a misconception out of the way, I don't fix you. You fix you. And
One
I'm like,
step at a time.
Why do I need you then? Okay.
But you had to do it head on. You had to address the things that
it's just more efficient.
Yeah, exactly right. It's easier.
Yeah, basically. Okay, so when you think about, like you said, this evolving brand and you're looking at your audience and stuff, but then you're still having to be authentic and stuff to yourself, that's actually a lot of thought. Like, that's a lot of actual thinking and everything behind it. Is this something that you do by yourself, or is this something like you and Dave do together because you guys have to have a partnership brand as well?
Yeah. There's actually 3 kind of brands: J, Triple M, J and Dave, and then there's J. So it has to fall into the categories. Does it work for me? I've got a podcast coming out very soon, which is one that I was doing a couple of years ago. But it's now coming back and it's going to be on our listener app. And
Is this the mental health one?
Yeah, it's about struggles. Yeah.
We will put the link in the show notes.
Yes. But so that's my child. So that's coming back to being broadcast again and created. So I had to look at it, my personal brand. Yes, would it fit Triple M if they were interested in doing it, which they are. So that it fits that. So there's all these little things. What I do, because if I want to do something, it is a passion project. So it's not something that I want to do to, get more listeners and lots of stuff. It's about sharing that message. So, but if I'm going to do that work on that, can I use Triple M as a platform or the listener app as a platform to get that message out as well? Yeah. So then it fits all those little boxes. So I do that with everything that I do that I want to do on a business level or radio station level or whatever to make sure that it ticks all those boxes. Yeah.
So for people
a lot of thinking.
And that's what I think, that's what I try and get across to people as well. Like, you don't have to, I'm not saying that you need to craft your brand like it's something separate from you or it's like this persona that you're stepping into or whatever. Like, it still needs to be genuine and everything. But at the same time, who knows themselves really well if you don't reflect on it?
And those kind of things just come down to, does it feel right?
Yeah.
Rather than,
Am I just doing it for the sake of doing it?
Yeah. It's like, does it feel right?
Yeah.
Is it authentic to me?
Yeah.
Is it going to work that
And,
way?
I think knowing, just like we do brand values and stuff for businesses, knowing what your personal values are and that they can change over time and stuff as you grow older and come across more things or whatever. No, I think that's a really good starting point for creating a brand, is actually just knowing what you personally value, because that's then what you get to be known for.
Absolutely.
If being loyal is super important to you, then that's, probably a value for you that you want to demonstrate in everything that you do. So you're not going to chop and change between different deals. You're probably going to sign up for something for 2 years or whatever because you want to be loyal to one thing.
Absolutely.
So if you got young professionals, and remember that, we're talking to like solicitors and accountants and all that sort of stuff, as well as say people who are wanting to get into radio and just like, even I don't think just any industry and stuff, people can have a personal brand, and you don't have to be an owner or anything. You don't have to be someone in the public eye. No. You can have a personal brand, whatever you're doing as employee, etc. When people are first starting out in that, coming from your, I hate to use the term mistakes, but from what you've learned over the years, that's a better way of saying that. What tips would you give to those people when they're first starting to, because that's what I get asked. It's like, how do I figure out my personal brand? Because people, they don't know where to start. And
I think you said the first one is don't say yes to everything.
That's
Obviously,
exactly
you
right.
want to learn from everything
Yeah.
you can,
Yeah.
but working out what fits with you.
Get a piece of paper, write down your passions. And I've done that many times before. So in my radio, when things, go up and down, ebbs and flows in radio, I'm like, what else can I do while I'm doing it? I love the show. What else can I do to try and build my skills or, get something extra? So that's where the podcast came from. Okay, podcasting, it's audio medium, people are doing it. So what can I do what can I talk about? I love animals. Should I talk about the animals? Everyone's talking about animals. Scrap that off. And then I just went through a bit of a list. And that's just an example. So if you're not in media, if you're just an average Joe Blow, what are you passionate about? Are you passionate about helping people? Are you passionate about going and sitting with older people at an old person's home because they don't have any family and friends? I know that's a silly sort of example.
No,
but
I think it's what are the things that hit home with
that's
you.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, so if it's sort of like, because I've actually got a friend who's like that, where she just loves old people, and that whole where some older people, when she was a little kid, she found out that some older people don't have family anymore. And so for her sort of thing, that was like a really hard, it's like the Orange Sky Boys. You know what I mean? When they found out when they were younger that people are homeless, to them it was just such a shock. And now they've created a fucking movement, you know what I mean? Like
changing lives.
Not that you have to do that big of a personal branding thing, jump, but it's figuring out what really gets you in the heartstrings sort of thing, what means something.
The old person's home thing. So for example, you could go, right, beyond me going and sitting with an older person, can I create a foundation where that we raise money to get dogs to go into said old person's home,
or
and
even a
sit
step
with
before that, just taking a group of people once
Exactly
a week.
right.
You know, you start baby steps.
Yep,
You're sharing that with
raise
people.
money for bunches of flowers to take to the old ladies who don't have any family. Like, it's just small things like that. Oh, it's got goosebumps in. So what do you do? What can you do to try and make a difference in people's lives? You don't have to be on the radio. You don't have to be multi-millionaire. You can do something so small.
And I think that's too, it's like knowing what you're passionate about and what really hits home with you, whether it's about, understanding what your personal brand is, but it's also what value you can give back to the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a personal brand should come to, is like, what is your value in this world? And it's, and quite often it'll be that you do stand up for something. Sounds confrontational. I don't mean it as like, I know that what you stand for.
Yeah.
And it's sort of then that is not only what you give back to and where you help out and where you're making an impact, it's also your brand and what you're known for.
Yeah.
And, but even just the kind of work that you do and stuff, like knowing what you're passionate about, people say it's a lot fucking easier to say it than to figure it out. And even as a 39-year-old person who fucking loves what they do and is so ingrained in it. It's like, anyone who knows me knows that business is like a big part of who I am. And I used to feel really bad about that too, whereas I'm sort of coming more to terms with that as well. But, oh shit, I just lost my train of thought.
But when you love something, it's not work. Like when you're passionate about, yes, it is work because it stresses you and all. But you know what? You get to do what you love for a living.
Thank you.
And calling it a personal brand is just putting a title on it. But you would still do what you do every day if we didn't go, Jay, what's your personal brand?
Yeah,
Like, what are you looking at?
But it also means that I remembered my thought, is that when you're passionate about something, you still have those, like you said, ebbs and flows of time, whatever, where it's like, wow, this is really hard right now, or this has changed my mind, or this, and it's like, am I still passionate about this? Mm-hmm. And I think that's something, like, I know I've spoken to people, like, doing keynotes to uni students and stuff where they come up and they're like, I don't know what I'm passionate about. I'm like, dude, don't worry about it. Like, you will fall in and out of what passions are through your life. You're not necessarily always going to be 100% clear on it, but if you keep reflecting and keep coming back to it, that's the advice that I give to people, sort of
Keeping
thing.
it fresh and rebranding yourself a little bit. Like, honestly, that's how you keep on. Because I could have and I have been bored many times over the years where I'm like, why am I doing this? And then, but it's just
because you're a human, man.
Exactly
you know
right.
what I mean?
Exactly
like everything
right.
becomes drudgery if we let it.
Yep, exactly right. So, but then I invented the wheel. Okay, so this isn't working. How about we do this? How about we do this? How about we change? So my brain is never stopping. It's always thinking about the next best thing. So, yeah.
So you future plan a lot about your brand?
Yeah. So I know what's coming up in 2 months, 3 months from now, like
wow.
radio-wise. I know what's coming up in personal life-wise. So it's always about, but that's how I work. I wouldn't suggest everybody do that because it gets exhausting up here. And that's why I need to detach and go...
I'm a planner as well. I feel ya.
Yeah, and that's why I have my animals.
It's useful, but also difficult.
I detach and I lay down with my animals, and that's everyone's like, let's go out and let's get on the piss. And I'm like, I just want to spend time with my
fuzzy and
animals.
warm.
But that's when I get my good ideas, and that's when I just relax. And I think everybody needs to find that balance. So because you work so hard to do what you want to do. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to show a bit of my personal brand now and be really annoying to Lani. So, Lani, what do you think is one of the characteristics of your personal brand?
Oh, gosh, I was worried you were going to ask me something like
I'm
this.
interested, Lani. Please tell me.
I can't put him on the spot. He's in radio. It doesn't happen. You're the only person I can put on the spot in this podcast today.
Okay, part of my personal brand is that I ordinarily like to be very behind the scenes. So I have been in Jade's life and her work life for over a decade now, and many people still don't actually know me, which is I'm totally fine with that. I like to be behind the scenes. I am worked out that I'm good at organising, but I like to do a little bit of everything. So I really struggled with this question, and Jade even asked me the other day because I have been working from home at the moment and things have changed with my role a bit again. She goes, what are we going to call your title? I'm like, I don't even care because what I do each day is totally different. And, you've said this recently today. I can't remember who was in the room, but describing what I do for you and for the business is sometimes very intangible. Yeah. So, I've worked out that that's part of what I like. And it's interesting, upon reflection, I've worked out that I am quite introverted, which I wouldn't have expected ordinarily my personality to be and how people see me. But I've worked out from that reflection and from watching Jade reflect on herself and grow, kind of going, oh yeah, no, how would people see my experience with that and how it actually was? You know, once you layer those two things together, you go, that's why I did that.
Yeah.
And that this is where I'd actually want to be and this is where I was.
But behind every successful person, and Jade's quite successful in doing this business stuff, there's always somebody who is instrumental in pushing that person in the right direction. Have I made the wrong decisions? No, you're doing great. What have I got on board? This is what you're doing today. Like,
this is what I want to do. Maybe you should think twice about that.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. Jamie, my other half, is
very nice about it.
Yeah, Jamie, my other half, I don't pay him to do it, but he does it for free. But he's very much like that. Dave is like that with me. So I think like what you say, like your characteristics for your job, and you're like, oh shit, what do I do? Sometimes I look at and I'm glad you didn't ask me that, because I'm like, what is it that I do? I don't know. Which is so weird.
I thought what you do was so obvious, I didn't even worry about it. That's why I put her on the spot.
But I think...
Damn it, I had a chance to and I missed it.
From an outside point of view, like, I didn't even know that you're instrumental in doing what Jade did. So you've done that very well for me to go, fuck, I didn't know that.
People think I'm a lot better than what I am. Trust me, man. It's a whole fucking illusion, I swear to God.
You're the duck underneath going like this the whole time, and she's on top going, everything is great, you know.
Exactly, but, you know, close. We're both kind of the duck.
Yeah.
Run with it, I say.
That's pretty much it. We've worked out an interesting dynamic, and thank you. It's definitely helped me work out my personal brand.
Fantastic. And see, here you are doing a video podcast. And behind the scenes, my ass.
Yeah. And a part of something Jade really enjoys doing for work and for the team is personal development with people. So that's why she likes to put me on the spot and asking me awkward questions.
But doesn't it, you know, making something awkward or unfamiliar, it actually pushes you a bit further. So it gets to know you a little bit better.
Yes.
Good, and it's just interesting, man. Like, I ask questions to people because I'm interested in it. The same thing with, like, the
No, you asked that
stuff.
to be a shit then.
Oh, I did. Yeah, no, true.
Just to
But I actually was interested because it is something we've talked about before, and I know that's something that you do ruminate on occasionally as well. So
yes, it's ruminating again.
I don't even know what that word means.
Ruminating means thinking about. You use it in the context of marinating.
It's doing its own thing, and it's just like, okay.
When you ruminate on something, you're just pondering on it.
See, this is why I'm on radio.
Awesome. Cool, man. That's awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Loved it's nice being on this side of the table, but I don't realise sometimes and think until maybe it's time for you to come on my podcast, because this is... But I think that's what it is. Like, it makes you go, standing back and talking about it, even though it's challenging and hard, and you hear about what you have achieved and all that sort of stuff, it makes you go, I'm doing pretty okay.
Yeah. And that's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a nice acknowledgement.
I'm trying to get to that stage.
You're going to get there. You're already there. Yeah. You're already there.
Yeah, it'll happen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming in, Jay. We really appreciate talking to you. And we will be tuning in tomorrow to listen.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Marketing and Margaritas. Find more free marketing tips, tricks and laughs at rebelnation.com.au.